Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at uenradio.com.
I found my way home across the Grand Mirage. Ever since the...
And we have applause! Yes! Excellent. Hello, this is the Alison Arngrim Show, and I'm Alison Arngrim. And yes, you know me as Nellie Olson from Little House on the Prairie. And this is my fabulous radio show where we talk about the wonderful shows and people and books and movies and music that made you feel good. TV shows that made you feel good, people that made you feel good, and people who are doing wonderful, incredible things now to make the world a better place. And I'm excited today because today we're going to be talking about the great Ella Fitzgerald. Not just tisket a tasket for some of you. Ella Fitzgerald was awarded the National Medal of Arts, France's Commander of Arts and Letters, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. She was a lot more than just a singer, even though, yes, she was the First Lady of Music and the most incredible singer ever. I am here today because we have a book now about Ella. A fantastic biography that goes into not just her music, not just her brilliance and her philanthropy, but her personal life, her real life, her relationships with many, many famous people, including, yes, Marilyn Monroe. Wait, what? Yes. And I have with me today the author of this, Geoffrey Mark.
What?
Now, Geoffrey, no slouch at all. Also, what a career. You're one of these people, it's like, so what do you do? What do you not do? Geoffrey has been called a walking encyclopedia of show business history. And he's from Brooklyn, another New Yorker. I'm from Queens.
New Yorker,
Queens,
yes, of
Brooklyn,
course.
The bridge here. Okay. You kind of did everything. It's nightclubs and cabarets and cruise ships and an Emmy Award and a Grammy Award nomination. And you had I have a radio show. You had 2 radio shows. Well, you've got me beat. And stage and screen and everything. And he's written about Lucille Ball, Ethel Merman,
yes.
and the Family Affair cookbook, just in case you didn't have a cookbook.
Yes.
Because we like food. This is good.
So I am so thrilled to be here. So thrilled. I'm going to use my radio voice now. So thrilled. She got me all excited. I got loud, but I'm so happy to be with you. Well, we've been friends a long time, and I admire you so.
Thank you.
Because you're smart, and you're talented, and you're ambitious, and you've got women power. You understand it, and you're just a whole lot of fun to be with.
Thank you. You're so nice.
So I drove in from the desert just so I could spend some time
way
from
far.
you.
But it's cooler in the studio than it is out
It's
in
more
the
fun.
desert right now. So this is marvelous. You've already, you are an encyclopedia of show business knowledge, and hence the Ethel Merman book and the Lucy book and all these other books. But now this Eloquent, this took a long time.
This took over 30 years.
Yeah, this has been a while in the making. These others came first, but you've been writing this one the whole time.
Well, it's a very strange thing, being this walking encyclopedia, and yet I knew very little about Ella Fitzgerald. I was aware of a tisket a tasket. I was aware that she could scat sing the Lady Be Good thing. And then I heard a gospel album she'd done in the 60s, and that's all I knew about her, and I don't know why. She was on every variety show in the 60s and 70s.
It was the duets with Louis Armstrong that killed me, just killed me.
And unrehearsered.
Right.
We'll take a little side trip here for 1 second. Since you mentioned that, there's a secret to the charm. In 1956, Ella and Louis were taken into the studio to do two record sets, 2 LPs, when we used to have LPs with a needle that dropped on them. And Louis felt like a big brother to Ella. There was never anything romantic between them, but he felt close enough to her that these 4 LPs that they made together, there were no arrangements. They got the best jazz musicians in the world. They decide on the song and the key we would sing in, and they'd go. But just before they get the signal from the booth, Louis would whisper some insanely filthy thing in Ella's ear, so that when she began to sing, there was this laughter in her voice, and it comes across on the recordings. He did it on purpose to give her a goose, because those things were done in one day.
Well, because that's like directors do that. I remember my mother doing commercials,
Yes.
and the director would tell her a dirty joke like 2 seconds before they'd go on, and that's why everyone's sort of all hopped up and hyper in the commercial. It's like, what? That's fantastic. That's perfect.
But to get back to how I came to Ella,
Right, because I was reading your book. You were relatively young, and you were like, "Oh, Ella," and you were watching what, like Dinah Shore or something. and just-
Dinah exclamation point. Dinah had
Dinah.
an afternoon talk show, and she was doing the best of the first ladies. And she had Beverly Sills as the first lady of opera, and she had Lucille Ball as the first lady of television, and Elizabeth Taylor as the first lady of films, and Ella Fitzgerald as the first lady of song.
Okay, you could do like that episode of a show and retire, because what else would you follow that with?
Well,
You'd
where
be
else
done.
could you do that today? There
Right.
is no
It's-
show like that
no,
today.
It's impossible.
And Ella came on with a Tommy Flanagan trio. He was her musical director at the time. And she did I'm Beginning to See the Light, and a wonderful Paul Williams song that I do in my show called Ordinary Fool that no one knows, but Ella found it and rescued it from obscurity. And I just sat there and said, who is this creature? No one can do what she's doing, because it was obvious that she was pulling notes out of the air, just her inspiration, whatever inspired her in that nanosecond came out of her mouth. And I had to know more. And I went to Colony Records in New York, which used to be on Broadway. If you wanted to do research for music, they had everything. And I said, I must. Please, sir, I must know more about Ella Fitzgerald. He said, okay, you need the Cole Porter Songbook
Right.
and Ella in Berlin. And there are stories about both that I do in my live show, and I sing songs from both. And yeah, that's the beginning of hundreds of albums you do research in. So for this book called Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald, which you can get on Amazon.com. It's a click away, folks.
I did download my Kindle, but then you very nicely signed this one to me. So
Yes. The Kindle is lovely, but the hardcover version has 270-something photographs in it.
and like amazing photographs.
And then-
Oh, this is Marilyn. There she is.
There she
There
is.
Marilyn
We're
Monroe.
going to talk about
We will
Marilyn
do the
today.
Marilyn story, totally.
But this has been an amazing journey to get this book out and to share with all the folks out there her life, her music, and then my connection to her life. Because towards the end of her career, I sort of became a little part of the family.
Nice.
And now I work with the Ella Fitzgerald Charitable Foundation, so I'm, again, part of the family and a part of the deluxe version of this book. The deluxe version has 2 CDs in it.
Ooh.
Well, here's one of those happenstance things. I was working with Patty Austin at the Grammy Museum in Los Angeles, saluting Ella on her 100th birthday. And there was a person there from Universal Music. He said, hey, Jeff, I know you've worked for Decca Records. Yeah, I did. And you've worked for Verve Records. Yeah, I did. One of those is where I got my Grammy nomination. He said, well, they're the same company now. We own them. Cool.
Convenient.
Oh, we own Capitol Records, her next label. Oh, cool. We distribute Pablo Records, her next label. And I said, gee, wouldn't it be great to be able to include a little something from everything so people could listen to the music while they're reading it? Well, that was, I cannot tell you how many months of negotiation. But we made it happen. And there's 2 CDs in the book, the deluxe edition. One is all studio, 20 songs from the late 30s to 1990, 7 decades of music, but I think are the best. And they're sequenced just the way Ella would sequence them if she was singing them live in a concert. And the other one is a live CD from the late 40s to the late 70s. There's 19 songs because they're so long, you couldn't fit them all. But it is the best of the best of the best of the live stuff.
Wow.
Because towards the end of her career, her memory was failing, her health was failing. Her longtime musicians moved on to other things. And the people who were working with her weren't really aware of the huge canon of music. And she began to sing the same things over and over again. So I began to make up the lists for her to sing from, her show lists. So you make up, you can do this one. If you don't feel so well, these are lighter songs. If you feel like you're in better voice, you can do these.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
So that she could choose what felt right for her that evening without straining herself or her energy trying to figure it all out. So that's my itty-bitty, itsy-bitsy contribution to the latter part of her career. And for that, I'm thrilled.
Whoa. But This book, you go into detail. I started reading it, and you're talking about trying to get a hold of Frank Sinatra, trying to get a hold of all of these people who were in her life, and trying to get a hold of their people, and saying, okay, I need to confirm this story, and I want to talk about this. And not everyone was going to do it. And then people came out of the woodwork, and you wound up getting confirmation on amazing stuff that was never going to come out about her, that was never going to be in a book.
No, well, I winced, those of you who are watching us on video, because you mentioned Frank Sinatra. Well, I tried very hard. I didn't want to whitewash Ella. I didn't want to fictionalize her life. So much of that had been done. Everything in the press about her personal life had been almost complete fiction. I didn't want that.
Yeah, you also don't want to do a biography where these ones that come out and it's just like, oh, you just took the press clippings and threw them up in the air and sewed them together. You want a real story.
But I also didn't want a Mommy Dearest book. I didn't want, and Christina's a friend, I'm not putting her book down.
But you didn't want trash her. You liked her. She was your friend, for God's sake.
I didn't want to dramatize or sensationalize the book. I didn't want it to be fodder for bad publicity. I wanted to be respectful but truthful. So it was that balance I was going for. So I found out who you contact if you want to talk to Frank Sinatra. And I said, look, I just want to discuss the work, the TV specials, and the tour you did with Count Basie. That's all I want to talk about, nothing personal. And I didn't think more about it. I get a call one day from Ella's office, from Val Valentine, who was working in the office, and he'd been her... the guy who works the dials, her engineer for all those wonderful Verve and Pablo albums.
Engineers. Just a engineer.
Because Alison has this incredible engineer here. Before we went on the air, I was saying, wow, you got lucky. This guy is great. And he said, young man, Frank Sinatra called here. We're done. I said, why? And what I did not know was that Ella's longtime manager, Norman Granz, hated Frank Sinatra. And Frank didn't think well of him either. That Frank's voice came across their telephone lines bothered him. He said, don't call here again. And, boo-hoo, what am I going to do now? About an hour later, my phone rings, and I look up at heaven and I go, what now? And I pick up the phone, and it's like, we have Mr. Sinatra on the line. Please hold. Hum. Hey, buddy, I hear I screwed something up for you. All I wanted to do was find out if you were the Emmis, if you could be trusted. Did they know who you were? Gee, I'm sorry about that. Hamna, click. I didn't get to say one word to him, but he did send me 2 autographed pictures. And that kind of gave me the impetus. You know what? All right, so the family is not going to cooperate with the writing of the book now. Actually, they ended up later doing it. I'm going to go off on my own. Let me see what I can do with this. And very few people turned me down, and surprising people said yes. I spoke to all of her musicians, all of her arrangers, the people who got her from here to there, her best friend, her son. I got interviews that really bring out who this woman was and why, whether you are African American or Caucasian or male or female or straight or gay or Christian or Jew or Muslim or nothing, why her story inspires. Because the backstory to her life is just as fascinating as the music is.
Well, I was reading some of the notes from the bio and talking about her, and she was on the street at one point. I mean, she went to terrible poverty, and she was also shuttled about from family to family. It was like, okay, here's your mother and your stepfather. You go live over there. It was terrible.
It's even worse than that, because her mother and father were never married. Her birth father, she never knew. Her mother took a Portuguese lover, so there was a mixed relationship.
And also, that's what year?
In the 20s.
Oh, yeah. Okay, 1920. Hello.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they go from Newport News, Virginia, where she was born, up to Yonkers, New York, just outside of New York City. As you know, how close Yonkers is. It's a subway right away, really. But because of the ethnicities, Ella took it on the chin for being, hey, your folks are different. And she was, in a time when people cared about these things, she was a bastard. In the literal sense of the word.
Oh, yeah, 1920s, you're illegitimate, and your parents are in a mixed-race relationship, and your parents weren't married, and your mother has a boyfriend. Yeah, no, in the 20s, this was a huge, huge, huge deal. People would be horrible to you for this.
Okay, so she's getting that kind of flack. She's getting flack just because she's black, because that's what life was like back then. And then she's a female, and she's being expected, she's being taught by mom, put on the apron, put out some kids, take crap from your man, and be satisfied with life, with what life hands you. And even then she was saying, I don't think so. It just wasn't in her DNA somehow. Her mother died when she was about 14. Her stepfather sexually, physically, and mentally abused her so much that Ella ran away.
Wow.
And ended up, I'm skipping a little of the story because this is a long book, ends up in a reformatory for girls. Had she been male and black or white and anything, she would never have ended up there because she was a black female.
Well, that's what they used to talk about, homes for wayward girls. But usually it was girls who were being sexually abused. It was girls who'd become pregnant or had been sexually abused by a relative and had to leave the house, either ran away or the family threw them out for talking. And people say, who were all these terrible wayward girls who were somehow in these homes? Well, they were girls who were being sexually abused and had to leave. That's who they were.
And rather than helping her, first of all, she was segregated into a cottage only for black girls where it was already substandard.
Right, so it's not bad enough that they put you in this 1930s reform school, but now you're segregated there too.
If you order now, you'll get worse food and torn clothing. And their own paperwork said that on a regular basis, Ella was being taken into the basement and tortured. Their word, not mine. And Ella ran away. How good was this school? She ran away and nobody cared.
Oh, no, they didn't go looking.
No. So she ran to the streets of Harlem. And eventually she made a living. Remember, she's 15 years old, kids. And maybe that's why I relate to her so much, because I was on my own at 15. My parents legally divorced me, and I was on my own, as was she. I didn't have to go to the lengths she did. She became a numbers runner. And for those of you who don't know what that is, before there was legal gambling in this country, organized crime, you could take $1, and you know what? Today's number is 117. That's what I think it's going to be. And if you picked the right number, you got money back.
Just like an underground version of our lottery, but it was totally illegal. But that's what people say. He's running the numbers.
Yeah, so
and
Ella
this was a huge industry, and a lot of people were hired to run around and carry the money. And
when I was a young man in New York, it was still going on. That's how long this had been happening. And she became, in exchange for a roof over her head and food, a lookout in a house of prostitution. She was the girl, first of all, she was young and innocent and black, and could look out the window and make the house look innocent. But if she sensed there was a cop or an undercover detective or somebody who shouldn't be around, could give them the high sign, and they all started doing knitting and playing cards and, put on bathrobes and pretended like this was just an apartment building.
We were all just hanging out in massive amounts of makeup and high heels and our bathrobes, knitting.
Cooking and knitting,
cooking and
crocheting in our, G-strings, but very, very staid and secure. But Ella knew her only way out, and this is true in those days. The only way for her out of poverty, out of being treated like a secondhand person, would have been in show business. So Ella decided she wants to become a dancer. And she wants to call herself Snake Hips Fitzgerald.
Oh dear.
And go on the stage. Well, a lot of the theaters in those days, both the ones in Harlem and other places, in other cities and in New York, had amateur nights or amateur hours because live performance was what it was.
Amateur Night at the Apollo is famous.
Yes, because radio was brand new and there was no television and films cost money. And she put her name in and they called her at the house of prostitution to come in. And the ladies came with her. And the last act on the bill was a group called the Edwards Sisters that she says were the dancingest sisters you've ever seen. A flash act. Quick, 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 quick. One step after another. It left the audience breathless. And now, ladies and gentlemen, little Ella Fitzgerald is going to come out here. And she turned to her sex worker friends and said, I'm not going out there. I can't follow that. And they said, oh, yes, you are. And they pushed her on stage and the spotlight hit her. And we're never going to know who loved who more. Did the spotlight love her more, or did she love the spotlight more? And she started walking timidly over to the MC in front of a band, and one guy yelled out, what's she going to do? Because it was if they smelled blood in those audiences, they got wild with you. And the guy said, honey, you got to do something. Can you sing? And she said, I'm so nervous. The only song I know is Judy, that Connie Boswell recorded. He said, honey, we got the arrangement. We'll play it for you. Because in those days, bands had arrangements
all the songs
of popular songs so that people could sing them. Well, she sang the song, and she won. And she won every amateur contest she got into.
So she gave up the snake hips thing?
She gave up snake hips.
Thank God. Okay,
because-
because that would no.
Because as soon as show business began paying, she was no longer snake hips physically anyway. The pounds came on rather quickly. And
I'm glad she didn't go with the snake hips.
Yeah, I
Fitzgerald,
am too.
The
'Cause
dancing career.
I wouldn't be sitting here.
So glad she went the other way. Yikes.
I would not get the pleasure of being here if she'd been a dancer. And one of the prizes was an actual booking. And the next group in was a man named Chick Webb and his orchestra, who was a big-time African-American big band. He wasn't a star the way Count Basie or Duke Ellington were, but well-known. And one of his people saw Ella and brought her back and said, you need to listen to this girl. And he said, A, I don't need a female singer, and B, look at her. She's dirty. Her dress is torn. Her hair is askew. There's no makeup. She smells. Because Ella didn't know how to bathe. No one had taught her, gee whiz, how do I put this nicely? What women have to do to stay fresh.
Well, she was right off the street. I mean,
Yes.
obviously her mother didn't teach her anything, and then she was very busy cleaning the brothel. So
Yeah,
when did she-
and they didn't
right?
teach her how to clean
No.
things out for some reason. Maybe they should have taught her more than they did,
You
but they
would
didn't.
think.
Anyway, getting away from this topic, but they had her sing. And he went, oh, I see what you mean. He said, you know what? We're going to Yale Thursday. We'll try you out at Yale. If the Yaleys like you, you're in. The Yaleys loved her, and nobody ever looked back. And within 2 years, she was one of the top vocalists in the country. And within 3 years, she recorded A Tisket a Tasket, was the #1 vocalist in the country. And she had highs and lows in her career up through the mid-1950s. And
But she went within 3 years from the streets,
From the
starving
streets.
to death and unwashed, literally having no food, no bathing, one dress, to doing Tisket a Tasket and having a hit.
a song which she co-wrote.
In an era when women were not writing the stuff and getting the publishing.
As her son said, here was a woman in an African-American woman at that, in a totally male-dominated field that was brand new. Recordings and radio and sound movies, we're talking less than 10 years. That's brand new. And here she was at the forefront of it. For those of you who remember people like the Andrews sisters, I had the pleasure of having dinner with Patty Andrews. And I said to her, if you listen to Ella's early songs, I hear your voice in it. She was, imitating you. She said, honey, no. She cut me off. No. I was copying her. Dinah Shore was copying her. Doris Day was copying her. Ginny Sims was copying her. Martha Ray was copying her. She was the original. We all copied her. And then I talked to Maxine Andrews, because those two sisters didn't talk. And Maxine said, because of what Patty did, Laverne and I, our harmonies, we had to copy Ella's sound. So the Andrews sisters' sound is informed by Ella Fitzgerald's recordings. See, nobody knows that. That kind of musical history, how important she was at that moment. I'd like to write about people who are the best at what they do. True originals, Lucille Ball, Ethel Merman.
Merman, right.
There's nobody like these folks. There's nobody like Ella because she's of whole cloth. She's a complete original. And she surrounded herself, part of her genius was being with all these great big band musicians, and like a sponge, just soaked up all of the talent, all of the musicality, all of the nuances, put it in the hopper of her head, and it came out of her voice as something totally original. And there we have it, a whole career. From the 1950s forward, she is nothing less than a superstar, ever.
And the medal she received, I mean, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. This is a woman who not only kept this career going for decades, but then also, as I said, coming up at a time where you said women weren't going to accomplish anything in the business and had their place, and then African-American women had a place, and it was even lower than that. And then she came up, and then we're into the civil rights era, and she's speaking out, and she's famous, and she's doing things that people aren't doing.
Well, because she fought battles for everybody, and people don't realize it because she never took a bow for it. She did what she did without publicity because she felt Why should I get publicity for doing the right thing? That's what it's like saying, why should I get publicity for breathing? You're
Right, but she
supposed to.
clawed her way up from nothing, and a lot of people who do that, some of them say, well, I've got mine. I got mine. I guess you're on your own. And she didn't do that.
Well, we've been talking about Marilyn Monroe here, and who doesn't love Marilyn? I mean,
Right.
come on now. It seems that in doing research and in talking to some of these people, there is something about the 1950s sensitive movie star, the Marlon Brandos, the Marilyn Monroes, those people, Montgomery Clifts, Elizabeth Taylor, whose nervous systems seem to be not like everybody else's. To a one, they turned to Ella's music for comfort and solace. I believe it was Montgomery Clift used to go into the shower and play her in the bathtub and listen to Ella to like not freak out. Marilyn used to get naked with a bottle of champagne and drink it, folks. Don't let your imaginations go too wild. Drink champagne and listen to Ella sing ballads. She said, it's good for my tummy. There was something about her voice. I have seen this over and over. Yeah, Jeff, you wrote a book. You're making up stuff. No. Play Ella singing a ballad with an animal in the room. Inevitably, that animal will try to figure out where the sound is coming from, walk over to the speaker, lie down next to it, and just physically let go of everything and just relax. There's something in her voice that really does change the wild beast into...
I wasn't even going to get to the French thing, but because you brought this up, there's a French song, Ella, she has it.
Yes.
And the lyrics of the translation, it was a huge hit, and then it was like everyone's covered it in France. It talks about, yes, a voice, a gift from heaven, but one of it is about the state she puts us in, and she gives us this feeling. And it keeps talking about the feeling that she gives us in this strange state that her sound puts us into.
Yes.
And that seems what you're describing. Well, the French, they get things like that. You know, so
An
that's why I like
interesting,
that.
an interesting point of view is, and I'm going to apologize to this man because I can't think of which celebrity said this to me for the book. A very, very famous male singer. We'd all know if I mentioned his name, and I just don't want to give it to the wrong guy. But he said, I was attending Ella with my girl. That narrows it down a little bit. With my girl, and she was singing Round Midnight, one of Ella's favorite ballads and one of the hardest songs in the world to sing. And my girl started crying. And when the show was over, I asked her what was so sad and what she was doing. She said, you don't understand. I wasn't crying for her. I was crying for me. Her sound, her voice, I wasn't sharing her sadness. She brought up my sadness, which is very different than listening to like Judy Garland, who's wonderful. But when you hear her sing The Man That Got Away, you're sad about her man that got away. When Ella sang The Man Is Gone Now, or whatever the lyrics are, you're thinking about your own life and your own emotions. Somehow she gets inside of people. That's a very rare gift. And it's not something she tried to do. It isn't a gimmick. It's just, it's like my having blondish hair and you're having blondish hair. It's part of who we were born. It's a gift that she willingly gave to everybody. We were starting to talk about Marilyn. I don't want the hour to go away.
No, absolutely, because it was about Marilyn and Marilyn standing up for her and her standing up for Marilyn that they became very good friends and they were protecting each other.
Well, Marilyn sought Ella out. Marilyn was a highly nervous person. She had emotional problems, like many of us do.
Well, that's why I was talking about the hairdressers and the makeup artist. We had Whitey Snyder was the makeup artist on Little House. So all of our hair and makeup had all worked with Marilyn, knew her intimately and told us stories about her. And yet she was very fragile.
But she knew her power. All right. So if you remember that sentence for 2 or 3 seconds, because it's gonna inform the story. So of course Marilyn sought Ella out because she could. Ella played at Los Angeles a lot. She sang there a lot, and you could go see her. So Ella was having problems getting booked at the Macambo, which is a huge nightclub in Los Angeles at the time. So this is what Marilyn did for her friend. She went to the owners and said, look, you book Ella for 10 nights, because they didn't want to book Ella because she was black. They were afraid that their customers might be prejudiced and wouldn't come to see someone of a different color sing to them.
Everything was segregated. What year
Everything.
was this?
1954.
Oh, yeah, 1954. No, absolutely.
So she said, if you'll book her for 10 nights, I will be here every night with a table of 10. The 10 will be the biggest movie stars and recording stars in the country, and it'll be a different 10 every evening.
Okay, Marilyn at your front table with her 10 best friends. Yeah, you're going to book them. Yeah, hello.
And of course they took it.
Yeah.
And Ella never, ever had trouble getting booked again. There's a second Marilyn story. It happened in Denver. And Ella happened to be appearing there, and Marilyn happened to be filming near there. So she wanted to go see Ella, and she came a little early for publicity. And they're outside the club, and click, 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 click. You and I have been through that with the photographers. And we love it. We're hams. And they loved it. But it was time to go inside and go to work. And they started to show Ella the back door because she was African American.
Because it was absolutely separate entrances. Huge stars would tour and stay in a different hotel than the white musicians and white performers. That's how it was.
Absolutely.
Ridiculous.
So Marilyn put her arm through Ella's, and Marilyn, although she talked all breathy in the movies, could have a nice loud voice when she wanted to. And at the top of her voice, she said, Marilyn Monroe and Ella Fitzgerald are entering this place through the front door, or Marilyn Monroe and Ella Fitzgerald aren't entering. Well, if you're the management and there's all that press there, what can you do? Need I say that Ella never again was showed a back door anywhere. See, Marilyn taught Ella, it's okay to use your stardom to protect yourself and to demand that you get treated properly. They had together, today they call it girl power, and it's cute, and there are songs about it, but they understood that power of, okay, now there's two of us together. They can't buck both of us. And Ella changed. She became a more mature person from that and began to demand, you know what? No, I want first-class tickets. No, I want a suite. No, my dresses have to be better than this because I deserve it.
And no, you're not putting me at the hotel. You're putting me at the hotel with the white people, et cetera, which finally was starting to happen for people then.
And it was a thing. It was a big deal. There was a television show. Those of us who are over 50 will probably remember it. I'd lie about my age, but these days you can go online and they know exactly how old we are. We can't lie anymore. So yes, I am over 50. Thank God we don't look over 50, but I am over 50.
Hydrate. Have we had our water yet?
I won't speak to the beautiful lady here, but I am over 50. And I am older than she is. That much I know. They did a show called The Bell Telephone Hour, which was a high-class NBC show, a variety show of the best of music of all sorts.
For the young people like our engineer, TV shows were all named. There was the aluminum one. There was the Alcoa aluminum one. There was the Kraft one. They were
Kraft
named
Music
Kraft,
Hall.
There were all these specials where they would do these entertainment variety shows. And they were always named after the sponsor. Wasn't subtle. It was named after the sponsor.
Because the show only had one sponsor. For the half hour, the
Just
hour,
paid for the whole
one
thing.
company paid for all of it. And it was the Bell Telephone Hour, and they invited Ella to come on with her quartet. Well, here was the problem for them. Ella, for much of her life, worked with a mixed integrated quartet. She didn't care who the color of anyone was. She cared, are they good at what they do? So quite often, either her lead pianist or her guitarist was white. Most often, the other guys were black or Latino sometimes. Sometimes they were Asian. If she was playing Asia, she'd use Asian musicians. And NBC said, we can't have this. We need all of your musicians to be of one color or the other, preferably the other. And for those of you who remember what NBC's nickname used to be, I say in my book, so much for being the full color network. So what they came up with was that Ella was in front of a scrim. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, a scrim is a theatrical curtain. You can see through it to see shadows and lights, but you can't see through it to see people. So her quartet was kept in shadow behind her.
They had to hide them behind
So that you couldn't tell
a big
what-
filmy curtain up, so you wouldn't know
Which one they were.
They had actually had people of multiple races performing.
And her manager, Norman Granz, to his great honor, I think, took an ad out in Variety and told the story of what happened and shamed both NBC and the Bell Telephone Company for their practices, which of course ceased immediately. This is the kind of thing Ella did, but didn't go on talk shows and talk about. When Dr. Martin Luther King was becoming very successful in his civil rights movement, she sent him money. She would show up and march, even for just 10 minutes, fly in, march, and leave if she had to. But she never went on Johnny Carson or Merv Griffin and talked about it like Sammy Davis Jr. would, or other people would talk about it. Not that they shouldn't have, but she chose not to.
She just did it.
So folks didn't know. Folks didn't know that in the 70s, she took her own private money and started a place for children in the Watts section of Los Angeles, a place for kids to go to after school. She wouldn't take donations. She completely funded it from her own money. But it was not discussed. It was just there. That's how she felt about things. Ella was, we should say this, an enormously private woman. She did not like discussing her sex life. She did not like discussing her romantic life. She never, ever told the truth about her childhood, about her marriages, about with whom she spent time. And towards the end of her life, when she got ill, she never discussed that either. To the very end of her life, now Ella had bad diabetes that she fought for decades. And finally, her career came to an end because they had to, unfortunately, gangrene set into her feet, and they had to be removed. And she thought about maybe appearing in a wheelchair, and then they said, you know what, it's time. Because she was losing her hearing, too. She already lost her eyesight from diabetes. Now she couldn't hear the music anymore. It's like, okay, time to go. In her own home, you could not discuss the fact that her feet were gone or that she was in a wheelchair. Her illness was not a topic of discussion for anybody, for the people who took care of her, for her employees, for her cook, for her caregivers, for her son. She was a very private woman. That's why I was so careful about writing this.
I was going to say, how did you manage to do this? Because, okay, people of that era, obviously, there were people who didn't discuss if they had a marriage, a divorce, an affair. And certainly, it's only in the last, really, 20 years, people were talking about being sexually abused as children. This is not something people talked about even 20 years ago. So, obviously, we're finding out about so many famous people that actually had this background. But literally, she has surgery and has her feet amputated for diabetes. We're not even talking about that I'm in a wheelchair. It's just not even happening.
Her people gave out a press release, and it was a misleading press release because the press release said that she had been amputated from the knees down. Pardon me, because Ella felt that if they didn't say that, they'd wonder, well, why didn't she just up there in a wheelchair? She had to give a reason why she would not appear in public. And think about, though, how hard she worked. Now, we're talking about all these private things. Now, here's the performing Ella. I'd say, from the late 1930s forward, she worked constantly. From the late 1940s, when Norman Granz entered her life as her manager and eventually as her record producer, Ella was touring 42 weeks a year, 2 shows a night, 6 days a week, recording between 1956 and 1960. Ella recorded enough music, live and in the studio, to fill 27 CDs in 4 years. It takes Barbra Streisand 4 years to record one song. Now, the difference. And she was doing every radio show, every television show, and she was making films on top of that.
It's a wonder she worked at all after that. She didn't just say, well, I'm done now. That was an interesting 5 years ago.
She never wanted to stop. She said that the audience was her therapy.
Yes.
She's the only performer I know of who had more love for her audience than even they had for her, and more respect for them. Now, those of you who have ever seen a big name entertainer perform and sing in any kind of a cabaret or a concert hall, you know, if Cher or Barbra Streisand or Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones go out on tour, it's the Thus and Such tour, and they sing the same 8, 10, 12, 14 songs, and there are as many arenas as they go to. Ella never did that. Ella, except for whatever was new, if she had a new record out, she always sang that in that concert to plug it. But she could appear in Carnegie Hall at 7:30 and sing one set of 15. And if you had tickets to the second show at 10, she'd sing the new hit again, but the rest of the songs would be different. So in case you bought tickets twice, you wouldn't be bored. She kept a notebook I'm in Chicago. Ooh, they really liked Mr. Paganini and they liked Lady Be Good. And she'd write that down. And the next time she was in Chicago, she'd make sure she sang Mr. Paganini.
She did the regional favorites. Oh, they like this one in L.A. and this one in New York.
And then she would change everything else because she wanted everyone literally get the best bang for their buck. She never wanted people to feel they came away from an Ella Fitzgerald experience not completely satisfied. How can you, the respect that she had, the thought that she gave her audiences is amazing to me. I think that's why she's so loved. I think people who came to her concerts, I got to see her more than 30 times live. And the audiences would go so crazy for her. And I don't mean the maniacal fanatic crazy like you see in rock concerts. I'm talking about in a place like Lincoln Center or the Hollywood Bowl or Carnegie Hall. And I'm forgetting now which of the wonderful, wonderful ladies from Manhattan Transferred told this to me. But she said whether it was Janice Siegel or Cheryl Benteen, but they said they did this thing with Ella. And the audience got so wild they were unscrewing the furniture. That's how she described.
Pulling the chairs up out of the floor. I've seen that.
I saw her with Count Basie at Carnegie Hall. I was afraid the building was going to collapse from people stomping their feet in time with the Basie band and Ella singing, because the beat was so powerful and the love was there. She loved what she was doing, and every time she could do it, the stage was home. Her son said she'd come home for a few weeks in between things, and while she was home, they'd have macaroni and cheese, and they'd watch soap operas and baseball games, and family came over and cooked for them. And he said, and then about 2 weeks into it, I'd see it in Mom. I'd see the racehorses looking for, she's waiting for that.
They're getting fidgety.
She's
Gotta
waiting
get out of here.
to get to the gate to run again.
Right. Because people who do that, and if you're someone who's on stage, I was telling someone the other day, we were talking about stage fright and whatnot, and I said, no, I think I'm more comfortable up there than I am down in the audience. Once
here.
I'm out on the stage, I'm like, oh yes, oh good, I'm here. Hi, yeah. It's,
driving
that's
here.
your thing. That's what you do.
We had told you guys I drove in from the desert to and I'm so thrilled to be here with Alison. And my assistant, Oriel, who's now terribly embarrassed because I mentioned his name online, we were talking about, how do you feel about being here? And I had some surgery on my arm, and I was not doing a whole lot except public appearances that I had to do that I committed to. And I said, it feels so good to be dressed up and know that I'm going to be performing with Alison. That's what drives me. It is not a chore to do this. The chore is sitting at home in between engagements. Yes. So I understand this perfectly.
Now, see, you perform as well. Now, talk about your shows, because, yes, we're going to have him sing. Tell me about your show. Tell me about your show.
Well, the current show I'm doing because of the book, and I think it's a good idea, and the audiences do seem to love it. And I don't give myself the credit for this. The credit goes to the fan base of Ellis. I do a show where I sing about 14 of her songs. I don't do it in drag. I don't do an imitation of her. But I sing to the original arrangements. And in between songs, I tell you some of the stories I've told today.
About her life.
And more we haven't gotten to. And it's a very curious thing, the love I get from the audiences. And when you're on a stage, the lights are in your eyes, you really can't see the people too well. But when you can, I can see them mouthing the lyrics along with me. They're singing along in the audience, even to ballads. And I've had people pull me aside afterwards and say, of course you're not Ella Fitzgerald, but we loved you. But this is the closest we're ever going to get to being in our live audience and hearing these arrangements being sung live. This is the closest to an Ella experience we're actually going to get, and how much they enjoyed it.
And you also have your own incredible persona. I mean, you're an interesting and exciting person. You have a personality that comes out of you. Now, I have to ask, because I said I was going to ask you this. You wear these amazing outfits. Every time I see you, you have on sequins. You have the baseball cap shape, but in sequins and in a different color. I don't know that I've ever seen the same one twice.
I have 75 sequined baseball hats and 3 Frank Sinatra hats that are sequined. And of course, I wear jewelry to match and ties
Right.
to match.
It's all
And then I
coordinated.
have
And
sequin,
themes. You have
sequin
themes.
vests and jackets that I wear to quote. Well,
How did it start?
well,
we have to know.
the joke is, of course, you reach a certain age, you got to learn how to package it because when you're 20, when you're 25, when you're your engineer's age, you can get out of the shower and comb your hair, and you're ready to go and be impressive. You get over 50, and he's blushing. I love making people blush.
Because he looks great. He throws on a T-shirt and
He's-
jeans, and he looks amazing.
He's a
What are you gonna do?
handsome young man. My assistant Ordiel, a handsome young man. Ordiel doesn't even put water. He just puts his fingers through his hair, and he looks gorgeous. Well, you get over 50, you got to start packaging it right. So I was doing a show many years ago, and wonderful, wonderful comedian Rip Taylor was in the
Rip.
audience.
I love Rip Taylor.
I love
I'll
Rip
probably
Taylor.
get him. I'm
Rip-
going to get Rip Taylor on. We're
Rip,
gonna get
we
Rip
both
Taylor.
love you a lot
Love
and
Rip
miss
Taylor.
you. And Chuck McCann was in the audience.
Also,
so,
Little House on the Prairie, Chuck McCann. On Little House, Tinker Jones. We all love Chuck McCann.
Absolutely. So Rip and Chuck took me out to dinner. Probably more likely, I took them out to dinner because Rip, a little close with the money, but a wonderful, wonderful man. When he pays, it's a hamburger. When you go to a restaurant, you pay. You understand that's how it's going to be. And you know what? It's worth it. The advice he gives, the knowledge of show business. And this is what he said to me. Jeff, you're a great performer. He said many of the same things you just said about me. And of course, I thank you. I didn't say that. Thank you. And I thanked him. He said, but. And I thought, uh-oh, here we go.
Oh, well.
But you dress like an accountant. Because I used to wear 3-piece suits and, gray. And he said, you're not a gray person. You need to sparkle on stage. And he sent me to a store. There used to be a restaurant in West Hollywood called the French Market.
Oh, I love the French Market.
And
yes.
inside the restaurant, there were little
The
itty-bitty boutique stores.
Yes, I went to all of them. I love that place.
When she says all of them, kids, they turned over about once every 3 months. So if you were there for 4 or 5 years, you saw 600 or 700 stores coming and going and coming and going. And they had this one store. He said, go to this one store, and they had what I would call, for lack of better, hooker wear. Boas, see-through blouses.
I totally shop there.
Okay. And they had these sparkly hats. Now, the one I had my eye on wasn't sequins. It was little mirrors. And I said, I would never wear this, but how much is it? $50. Yeah, right. I came back a couple of days later, and I was leaving the next day on my first cruise as an entertainer. And I'd never been on a cruise ship. I'd never been on a cruise as an entertainer before. And I do other shows besides Ella. I do things about Lucille Ball and Ethel Merman and the Honeymooners and Ed Sullivan. And they were booking me a lot, but this is the first one. And I was having a very late night sandwich, and I was sitting right next to the little boutique store. And the guy looks at me, comes over, puts the original hat number 1 on my head, puts his finger in my face to my nose like this and says, you need this. $5. Now, we're from New York, so the first thing was like, why are you in my personal space?
And making me wear a hat.
But then, $5. It was $50 2 days ago. And my voice said, take the hat, take it and use it. So I went on the ship and we went to rehearsal, and I told the lighting guy, when they introduce me, when the cruise director introduces me, I want you to black out the stage, no ambient light, hit me with a spotlight from about nipples up to about 2 or 4 inches above my head, and just follow me wherever I go. And the mirrored thing had this effect of making it look like my head was on fire. And the audience, of course, they applaud for, yeah, Geoffrey Mark, because they're in the middle of the ocean. They got no place to go. They want you to be good. And then they started to laugh. And I milked that laugh and milked that laugh. And finally, it's like, what? The hat? As innocently as I could say that. And I just stood there with my arms folded, staring at them like Jack Benny. They were hysterical. Right audience, right night, right amount of liquor in them. It just worked that night. And I told them, when the laughter subsided, how I came to have the hat on my head. And I went to grab it by the bill and throw it away. And as one, they yelled, no! And I said, you like this? Yes. All right. I did my show. I go backstage, I towel off. And as you probably know, when you go on a cruise as an entertainer, they want you to go out there.
You go and you meet and greet after the show.
Because that's
yes.
in your contract.
Right.
You have to do that. And then you
Talk
have
to
to
the nice
walk
people.
and you have to walk the ship and go to all the different lounges and be a presence. I came out. Where's the hat? Where's the hat? All right. I ran back to the stage, to the dressing room, and I took it off the floor where I'd thrown it because I was never going to see the hat again. $5.
No, sight gag. I'm going to do this hat
It was once, just to catch. I could catch my breath doing something new. That's all I wanted. I dusted it off. I put it on my head. What I did not know was that they had videotaped that's how long ago this was, videotaped my show, and they showed it at 11:30 on closed circuit to everybody on the ship because they didn't have television. So everyone's used to a Tonight Show kind of show. They put me on. So by the following morning, not only had the 500 or so people who were in the audience seen me, but the captain had seen me, the cruise director had seen me, the ship's doctor had seen me. Everybody who wasn't there, the people who worked underneath the ship who made breakfast saw me. I got 5 feet out of my cabin. Where's the hat? Where's the hat? Where's the hat? And had it been a cartoon your mother was in, there would have been a light bulb above my head. And I went, okay, the audience has found something. The audience found it. Thanks to Rip. The next cruise I did, I brought 3 hats. The next cruise I did 10 hats.
They multiply.
This goes on for years. And I do a show, I don't remember how many years ago.
I'm going to make you sing in a minute.
Okay, and Peter Marshall and his wife Laurie are there. Peter Marshall, the wonderful crooner and master of the Hollywood Squares. And she says, why aren't you wearing sequin shoes to go with them? And I said, Laurie, I wouldn't know where to get them. I now have 6 pair, thanks to Laurie, of sequin. I'm wearing them right now. I'm wearing them right now.
They're lovely, actually.
And they have red in it to match my black and red to match. So you said you wanted me to sing.
I'm gonna make sure, but now we understand finally the hat, and this makes sense. And it's Rip. It's Rip Taylor. But he knows. He's a master showman, and he knows his stuff, and he's right. And now, no, you could not with your personality dress like an accountant in gray and do this. This would not make sense at all.
No, Bob Newhart, that was good for. For Geoffrey Mark, it doesn't work.
I get the hat, and now he's going to sing.
This is Ella's favorite opening song. It's got a Marty Page arrangement. I've been talking for 50 minutes. Hopefully I don't get hoarse on you. But here's Sweet Georgia Brown. No gal maid has got to shake it on Sweet Georgia Brown. 2 left feet, but oh so neat, has Sweet Georgia Brown. They all sigh and wanna cry for Sweet Georgia Brown. I'll tell you just why. You know I don't lie, not much, 'cause it's been said she knocks 'em dead when she lands in town. What a shame, what a shame, how now she cools him down. The feller she can't get, all the fellers she ain't met. Georgia named Georgia claimed her Sweet Georgia Brown. No gal maid has got a shade on a Sweet Georgia Brown. 2 like her feet so neat, has Georgia Brown. They all sigh and wanna cry for that Georgia Brown. I'll tell you just why. You know I don't lie, not much, 'cause it's been said she knocks him dead when she lands in town. What a shame, how she cools him down. The fellers she can't get, all the fellers she ain't met. Georgia named her, Georgia claimed her Sweet Georgia Brown. No gal, not one gal, has got to shake it on Georgia Brown. 2 feet so neat, hey, that Georgia Brown. They all sigh and wanna cry for that Georgia Brown. Listen while I tell you, you know, I don't lie for the tips, Porter slips to Sweet Georgia Brown. They buy clothes at fashion shows with $1 down. Fellas, she can't get all the fellas she ain't met well. Oh boy, tip your hats for oh joy. She's the cat, she's no gal. It's got a shade on sweet. She's got 2 left feet, but oh so neat. She's got money and clothes and diamonds too. There's just nothing that gal can't do. She's got the guys all hanging around. How she really cools them down. Georgia named her, Georgia claimed her. Sweet Georgia Brown. Georgia named her, Georgia claimed her. That old gal called Georgia Brown. Pow! Merci beaucoup, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much.
Formidable.
Merci, merci, madame.
Wow.
So I've been doing that for 45 years. This is my 45th year in show business.
I think it's my 50th or 51st.
And we both look
Scary,
so
isn't it?
young.
I know.
But that's we're talking about being a pleasure with you. And tell me if you feel the same way. You know, celebrity is nice, but when you get to spend time with people who are intelligent and talented and understand show business, how can you not have fun? I
Exactly.
love surrounding myself with talented, intelligent people who have a great sense of humor. That's why I love spending time with you.
See, that's why I want to do this show. I had on Anson Williams. I had on a bunch of people from Little House on the Prairie. I've got you. I'm going to be having these kind of people in. And now I'm going, got to get Rep Taylor on. But yeah, it's people who've been in show business a long time and people who are doing cool things now, like writing amazing books about Ella.
Amazon. Amazon.com,
Everything
Ella.
is on Amazon. You
A
can
biography
get it.
of a
You can Kindle
legendary.
it, but you can order the book and get the thing with the reel, with the thing with all the pictures and the thing. Oh,
And get the
so beautiful.
get the
Look at
deluxe
those,
edition
Frank.
with the CDs. This has been, I know we're off the air in
There's
like
Louis.
17 seconds.
What do we do? How many minutes? We got minutes? We got minutes? Ah, we got like a whole 4 minutes.
Oh,
This
great.
is amazing. Oh, yes.
I want to come back whenever you'll
Please.
have me
I will.
because this is a lot of fun to be with you
Thank you.
and to be able to share this with our friends out there. I know you've got just so many fans out there. And I think when I post on Facebook, and we are both available on Facebook, folks, if you want
We're
to
all
find
over
us.
the internet. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, and I'm on Instagram. I'm on. But they got if it's a gram or they got. I'm on it. If it's .com, I'm there.
I get the most reactions when I show pictures of us together at different events. You're just a recognizable, iconic face. You and when I'm seen with our friend Dawn Wells,
Dawn Wells,
who I've been
Marianne.
friends. I've been
Yes.
friends 20 years. I'll come on next time and tell you some
did a
insider
web series.
showbiz,
She played my mother.
She
played
did.
my mother on Life Interrupted.
which was brilliant. I got to read that
hysterical.
script. I got to read that script, but long before it was in production, I got to read it because Dawn didn't know if she should. I said, "You grab this,
Right, and I
do
hope you
this."
told her, "Are you crazy? Go do this." Right?
Absolutely, yeah. And you're wonderful in it. You're wonderful. You know, some things are hugely successful. Some things maybe not so much. But everything you do is quality. It's another thing I admire about you, including this show. It's very well done. It's simple. It's just us and this handsome young man. But it's he's good. We know what we're doing. We've got like 100 years of show business sitting at this table
We
between
do,
us.
Actually, it's terrifying.
And, you know, and we didn't even get to talk about your mother.
My
who-
mother, Norma Macmillan, who was Casper the Friendly Ghost, Gumby, Sweet Polly, Purebred Underdog's girlfriend, and Davy of Davy and Goliath.
Okay, baby. My entire childhood is her mother. So how can you not love this woman? But what's even nicer, take away the show business, et cetera, she's just a lovely woman to spend time with. And
Thank you. And I finally found out why you wear that hat.
there you go.
I can sleep at night. Finally. You're amazing. We will have you back. Please, everyone, go on Amazon, get the book. No, really, I'm reading it now. No, it's really good. It's a really good book. It's amazing. And it's all about Ella. And it's just stories and things that have never, ever been revealed about her. I'm Alison Arngrim. This is Geoffrey
Mark.
And he's all over the internet. And I am Alison Arngrim, and this is The Alison Arngrim Show.
And boy, was this fun.
Thank you.
I found my way home across the Grammy.